What's up everyone? Welcome back to Tasker's Barbecue Supply. Today we're going to be showing you how easy it is to make a brisket on your pellet grill. Hey guys, as always, remember to hit that subscribe button down in the corner. Remember, it's free to subscribe and you're going to be helping out our channel. You're going to help us bring you better content and better product in the future. So smash that subscribe button and let's get rolling into the video. Alright everyone, we're back. Like I said, today we're going to be showing you how simple it is to make a perfect brisket on your pellet grill. A lot of people kind of get worried and they get overwhelmed that they think that a brisket is just too hard to do, and it's really not. Now I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks that might be a little bit higher than your skill level, and feel free to skip those. But I'm also going to go over the basics that you need to do with any brisket and put it on your pellet grill and show you how simple it is to cook one of these up. Now to start out, you can see we have a pretty nice sized brisket here. This actually was not store-bought. We purchase a few steers every year from our local fair, and this is one of the briskets that we got off the steer that we purchased. So this came directly from the butcher shop straight to us. It never hit stores. The nice thing about that is you get to pick and choose what animal you get, so you can kind of look over the exterior of that animal a little bit and kind of pick and choose what steer you want. We got 4 awesome briskets off of these steer this year, and as you can see, this thing is huge. It barely fits on the biggest tray I had. It does have a lot of fat to it, but I told our butcher not to trim it at all. Basically just cut it out, package it, and that's it. I would trim it myself. So that's the first step we're going to show you guys, is how to trim this thing for just a backyard barbecue. This isn't going to be competition style by any means. This is just going to be for the backyard barbecuer cooking something up for their family, or cooking something up for a party or some type of an occasion. So let's get started into trimming this brisket. So the first thing to know about any brisket is you have a point and you have your flat, and they are separated by a fat vein. We won't cut that fat vein out. Some people actually separate the point and the flat and cook them separately. That works really well. I just prefer to leave mine together. As you can see, my flat isn't huge on this brisket, and that's because of some of the other cuts we had done on this beef. Kind of limits the length of the brisket, but that's okay because we got a huge point section on this, which is my favorite part. So the next thing to know is you're always going to have your fat cap side and your bark side. Obviously, I have my fat cap side up right now. So we are going to leave some fat on this side, but you don't want too much. We will trim it down to roughly the 1/4 inch area in that ballpark. The other side, once we flip it over, I try to get as close down to the meat as I can, and that's the side I create my nice bark on with all my seasonings. So on this side here, we will trim some of this fat off. You don't want too much excess fat because it doesn't cook as well. And it doesn't render down if it's too thick. So we'll start trimming some of this side here, and I'll kind of give you some steps as we go. We'll try to kind of fast forward through this because it is a bit of a long process. But basically, so you know what's going on, we're just trimming this down to where we get a nice thin layer of fat on this side here, and then we'll be back when we start on the other side. All right, everyone. Now I know we said we were going to leave a fat cap on the top of this side here, but after some trim work, the meat marbling and everything looks fantastic on this top side. And I've looked at the bottom side, and I think that this is going to make a lot better crust side. Normally I would leave this fat cap on everything and then just trim the other side down, but this one's a little bit different, and every brisket you get is going to be a little bit different. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to trim this side down to meat and make this our bark side, and then it's going to help me not waste as much on the bottom side. So I'll get all this fat off of here, get it down to just the meat, and then we'll look at the bottom side and leaving a little bit of a fat cap and stuff that will kind of render down and be next to the heat. Because this side's so nice, I hate to put this down against the heat and not trim it down to bare meat and season this side and get a really nice bark and a really nice looking brisket off this top. Now, before I go any farther, those of you who have done briskets before are probably looking at this and saying, man, that's a lot of trimmings. You know, most of you know that you do have a lot of trim work on briskets, but that is a lot, and it's kind of a different looking brisket. Remember, when you get these from the store, 90% of what I just cut off has probably already been done for you. And these guys take briskets and pick out the best of the best and package them and send them out. If they don't look perfect, they probably grind them, and that's probably half of the burger you get and you just don't know it. But I told my butcher, don't look at them, just cut them off for me and package them up. So I got what I got, and I'm happy with that. It'll still turn out fantastic if you have a brisket that just doesn't look exactly like what you see in pictures and on other people's YouTube videos. It's okay. So let's get to trimming this the rest of the way up, and we'll be back in just a second. All right, guys, you can see the amount that we took off the top of this brisket. And again, that's just what you're gonna get when you get one straight from the butcher and you tell him not to trim it at all. But that's okay, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to trim this the way I want. As you can see, you can kind of see why I decided to keep this top side, my bark side. It's got great marbling, and it folds over nice. So I think this is gonna be a little bit better to have as my bark side than the bottom will. So at this point, you know, I still have a couple pieces of fat on here. I don't worry about it that much. This isn't competition brisket. If it was competition brisket, we'd be taking, you know, extra precaution. It'd take me about 3 times as long to trim it because I didn't want to make any divots in it. I wanted everything to be nice and perfectly even. I don't want any fat left on it. For just backyard, I don't worry about it that much, and you don't have to either. If you got small chunks of fat still left on here in little places, don't worry about it. That's just going to add a little bit of flavor. But the biggest thing you want to worry about is you want to get at least a decent amount of surface area of the meat itself on here. That way your seasoning sticks to it, and that's what creates your bark. So now we're just going to flip it over. This bottom side is going to take very, very little trimming at all, just for the simple fact that it's already got the fat cap pretty close to the thickness I want. And you can see here I got a little bit of skirt meat on it. I'm just going to leave that on here. Like I say, my fat cap's pretty close to the thickness I want it to be, so there's not going to be a whole lot of trim work here. Just kind of cleaning up any little rough edges and getting it ready to go, because like I said, this side's going to be down. It's not going to be any type of a presentation or anything like that, so we don't really care too much what this side looks like. Just want to clean up any type of rough edges, anything that's small meat-wise, like those little chunks that stick off that are going to overcook. You might as well just trim them off. We've got like pieces here that kind of stick up and they're just like a flap. They're not going to help us any. They're really going to hurt us more than anything. That fat thickness is pretty close. You can see that's not all fat right there. It's actually only, you know, right around 1/4 inch thick right here, so that's okay. It's pretty close to what we are along here, is right on our 1/4 inch. Do have a little bit of a chunk right there I'll kind of cut off. And then we do have a decent little fat vein over here. I'll just try to trim that fat vein down just a little bit. I don't want to take it all off, but I want to just kind of You don't want huge chunks of fat that are, you know, inch and a half thick like that, because what that does is that will slow down your cook process. And what I'm going to be trying to show you guys today is a pretty simple way to cook these on a pellet grill that hopefully doesn't take as long as what you're used to. You know, when I cook a brisket, you know, for an event, or if I'm cooking it for somebody, or if I'm cooking it for a competition, it's going to take a long time, especially if I'm doing it, you know, for somebody, and they want a big brisket done. You know, I've done 20-pound briskets and, you know, had those things cooked 16, 17 hours. This one isn't quite as big, but I also don't want it to take near as long because we're just cooking it for home. You know, I don't want to have to start it the night before or anything like that. We're going to cook it, you know, it's still early in the morning. We'll just put it on the smoker this morning and it'll be ready to go for dinner. So with that regard, this side's pretty well good. Like I said, I'm not going to go overboard with it. I'm just pretty well going to leave it the way it is right here. Get that little chunk there out. A little piece of cartilage they left there. So that's pretty well it for this side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into seasoning and getting this ready for the grill. I'm going to go ahead and start my grill up. We're going to be doing this on our Rectech Bull 700. We're going to be using Cooking Pellets Perfect Mix. So I'm going to get the grill warmed up and we'll be back in just a few to get this puppy all seasoned up and ready for the grill. All right guys, now it's time to season. So one thing that I like to do with my briskets is I like to inject them. And what I'm going to be injecting it with today is my favorite. It's by Butcher Barbecue. It's called their Prime Brisket Injection. It is a powder form injection, and all you do is you mix it with some cold water, shake it up. I just use a blender bottle because it works great. It gets any clumps or anything out. You just shake it up a little bit, let it set. This has a lot of phosphates in it. It's got a lot of beef in it. The phosphates help with your flavor and with your moisture. That beef flavor really gets a whole lot of beef down inside this meat. So when you take a bite, you know, you just get an overload of that beefy flavor, and that's what I really like. I know a lot of people will like to inject with some different flavors and stuff, and that's fine. Everybody has their preference, and you don't have to inject. This is one of those things that I was talking about. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. If you don't inject, it's going to work just fine. Don't have any frets. But I like to inject mine. So the first thing we're going to do is inject this bottom side. We'll flip it over, inject the top a little bit, and then we'll get this all seasoned up. So obviously I've got it all shaken up here and it's all mixed. Now all I got to do is spin my cap off, and I've got as much injection as I need. If I need to mix more, I can mix more. But the cool thing about this is I know that this will do plenty for what I have, but I won't have a ton of waste. If you buy pre-made injections, they work fine, but if you only do a brisket here and there, a lot of times what happens is it goes to waste in a refrigerator. What's cool about their powdered form is you can just mix up however much you need. If you don't want to do this much, you don't have to. You know, you could mix half this if you want. That's what I like about their powdered injection. That, and they taste awesome. Their bird booster, all of it's great. So let's just do some injecting on this brisket here. And basically what we're going to do is we're definitely going to try to get a bunch down in this point. And inject as you pull out. Just run this down in every couple inches. Inject some, pull out a little bit, and inject as you pull out. And we're going to come back farther, and we're going to get back toward this flat. And basically, again, all you're doing is you're just kind of coming across this thing. And just make it almost like a checkerboard pattern. Alright, and now that I feel we've got the bottom side injected good, we're just going to flop this over. We're going to do the same thing to the top of it. We're just going to go in everywhere and make our injections. Alright, now that we have all our injection into this brisket, we're going to go ahead and get our seasoning on. Now I'm going to start with the bottom side. That way we always finish with the top, because that's where our bark's at and that's where you want the nicest finish on your seasoning. So start on the bottom and just take all this excess injection and just rub it down onto here, and that's going to give something nice for the seasoning to stick to. Now on the bottom side here, I'm just going to go pretty simple. We're just going to go some Killer Hogs AP rub, and that's going to give us our salt, pepper, and garlic flavor. I'm doing like a salty and sweet, savory kind of flavor on this brisket. Usually I'll do traditional barbecue flavors, maybe some Killer Hogs barbecue or Frag Out flavor, something like that. But today we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to do a kind of a sweet and salty. So the bottom is just getting AP rub. And since this is the only thing this is getting, I'm going to go a decent coating on it, not super heavy. Make sure I get the edges real good. All right, now we're just going to flip it over because this is all the bottom's getting. Maybe we'll just pat it in a little bit here. That side's done. Let's flip it over. And again, same thing here. Make sure we kind of rub this injection around a little bit. Get some nice moisture on there, and you can see there's a lot of it on there. That makes it real easy for the seasoning to stick really well. So on the top, we're going to go a very light coating of AP rub. Just kind of give us a little dusting over top. And then we're going to go behind with Butcher Barbecue's Savory Pecan Seasoning. And this seasoning's really good. You can get it at our store. It's got some nice sweetness to it, but it's got some nuttiness and a little bit of pepper and stuff in it. So it's not super sweet, but it's really good, and I think it's going to go really well on this brisket. So we're going to coat this pretty good with this seasoning here. And this seasoning is kind of a sticky, cakey seasoning, so you do have to shake it a good bit. But we're going to coat it pretty decent with some of this. We would get some good flavors on here. And with all the sugar that's in this seasoning, I think it's going to make a really nice bark because it's going to caramelize really well. Down in the crevices everywhere, rub that in real good. Like I say, I'm going to put this on pretty heavy because I like a real nice, heavy, thick bark on the outside of my briskets. So I'm going to go pretty heavy with this. And again, remember, you're doing a pretty big chunk of meat here. It's not like we're just seasoning up a steak. So these flavors are going to go a long way getting into this meat as they kind of marinate down through. All right, we have an awesome, heavy, thick crust on the outside of this brisket. I'd say we're all ready to go. We're just gonna let this sweat here for a few minutes, and then we'll be out at the grill and we'll get this put on. We'll meet you out there. All right, guys, we got our Rectech Bull all fired up here. It's running 275 degrees, and we're using Cooking Pellets Perfect Mix. Now, as some of you know, I usually run a little bit lower temperature on my brisket, around the 240, 250 range, sometimes even lower if it's not a huge brisket. Today I'm going to be running this on 275 for a few hours, and then we're probably going to bump it up to close to 300. The reason we're doing that is, again, we're showing you the easy way to do this on your pellet grill in a one-day, short hours, that way you can have it ready for dinner. So we're going to bump our temperatures up a little bit more and get it done a little bit quicker, but it's still going to have an awesome flavor to it and a lot of smoke to it. So we've got our grill warmed up. Let's go ahead and put this on. Now I'm going to be putting the point toward my stack because that is the hotter side of my grill, and this thicker side needs a little bit more temperature to get done that thicker piece of meat. So let's go ahead and set this brisket on. We're just going to center it right in the middle of the grill grates. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our temperature probes in. I always put two in my briskets, one in the point, one in the flat. Just that way I can watch the individual temperatures. So we'll just run one right into the end of this point here. Kind of get it kind of deep in there. That way we can get our good temperatures. And then this other one, we'll put it out here toward the flat. About like that right there. That way we get a good temperature reading on both sides of this meat. Now, from here on out, all we have to do, we're just gonna shut the grill down and we're gonna let it do its thing. That's what we like about our pellet grills, and especially the Rectex and the Green Mountains. They have a PID controller system. They monitor their temperatures all the time, and they're gonna keep a consistent temperature throughout your cook. So I don't have to worry about my temperatures going up or down. It's going to get a nice even heat and a nice even smoke the whole time it's in here. And if for any reason the grill does drop temperatures or raise temperatures, or my meat hits its temperature, both of my grills have the Wi-Fi capability, so I get notified on my phone instantly and I know what's going on. So we're just going to let this take some smoke and we'll be back here in a little bit to check on it. All right, what's up everyone? We have our brisket up to 168 degrees in the flat and 165 degrees in the point. As you can see, by me putting it on with the point over toward my stack, it keeps our heat nice and even. Now, this has been on for about 4.5 hours and it's already pushing through the stall. It's hit its stall, but it's starting to push through, and it's already at the point where I'm gonna wrap it. So that's pretty quick, and that's what's the benefit of running this at 275 degrees instead of maybe 250 or even 225. You get done a little bit quicker. So it's ready to be wrapped. Our next step is I've got some insulated gloves. What I use is just some cotton liners with rubber gloves over top of them. You can use this, you can use the insulated barbecue gloves, anything just to protect your hands, because remember, you're pulling this off the grill, it's gonna be warm. And then we have 2 layers of our butcher paper pre-cut and laid out. We do have some scissors here because we may need to trim the ends of it. I always cut my butcher paper long, that way I know I have enough, but if I need to trim the ends off, I can. So now basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the grill. We're gonna pull both temperature probes out. We're gonna take our brisket. You can see all the juices running out of this. And does that not look amazing? You can see how juicy this thing is. It's pouring all over the place. So let's set this down here. I'm gonna go ahead and shut my grill. That way I keep my temperatures up. Now basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap this end to end, just so we get our ends nice and covered. Then we're going to tuck our edges underneath. Just kind of squeeze that down, and then I'm going to turn it, and we're going to go sideways with this. And that's about the right amount of butcher paper that I like to use. Some people don't like to go as heavy, but I like to have at least a couple nice coats on here. That way we keep all the juice in, but we still allow it to smoke to penetrate some. So basically all we're going to do is just curl up these edges here. And that's pretty well it. It's ready to go back on the grill just like this. So again, our point is right here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put the point end back toward the hot side of the grill. We're set it right in the same place. And then we're going to put our temperature probes back in and just push it right down through the butcher paper. There's a couple temperature probes in here. That one hit a lot of fat. I can feel it going right through that fat, so let's move it a little bit. That's better. If you feel basically no resistance, you just shove that probe and it just feels like warm butter. You probably hit a fat vein, which is fine. Just pull it back out. I can feel when I push in through here that I did hit the meat. Now, I'll be honest with you. I can already tell by putting those temperature probes in, this thing is super tender. And a lot of that comes from the amount that we injected it and just cooking these things at a perfect steady temperature on these pellet grills. But that does need to go a little bit longer. We're going to be shooting for around the 205 area. I always take any brisket I do at least over 200 degrees. But when we come out and it's hit 200, I'm going to start probing it and checking for doneness. So I want to check my temperature to make sure that my temperature probes I have in here are matching my thermopin. And then I also want to check that when I probe into it, it feels like it just did with that fat vein. I can basically just shove it through with no resistance. If I've hit that, then we're good to go. So we're just going to let this take a little bit more heat. We're probably going to bump it up to about 285, 295, just to help it push through that stall. And because now we're not so much worried about taking any more smoke, now we just want to get some heat brought into it. So we're going to bump the temperatures up a little bit to push our cooking process along, and we'll be back out here when our temperature hits 200. All right, everyone, we're back. Our probe temperatures are up to 203 and 207 now. We came out a few minutes ago when they first started hitting 200, and we went ahead and probed it with our handheld. It was at 200, the temperatures were accurate, but I just didn't feel it was quite tender enough to my liking. So we let it go just a little bit longer, give it another about 30, 35 minutes, and it's sitting perfect now. We're at 207. When we probe it now, it's like soft butter, so it's ready to go. We're only about 8.5 hours total in this whole cook, so it's relatively pretty quick. And you can see that, you know, when you bump your temperatures up to the 275, maybe 280 range for your first part of your cook, and then after you wrap it, you can bump it up. We did 295. That it pushes your cooking process a lot quicker, so it's easier for somebody who wants to get something done on the weekend instead of doing it the night before and letting it cook overnight, which is an option. I do that a lot. Put it on the night before and let it cook overnight to the next day. But this is nice where you can just wake up on a weekend, trim it up, throw it on the grill, and you can have it for supper. So let's get it pulled off the grill. We're going to check our temperatures one more time. We'll throw it on a pan, take it inside, and we're going to let it rest for probably 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll get to cutting it up. So let's double check our temperatures. That's perfect. I've got 207. And 205. So it's perfect. It's ready to go. So let's get this pulled off. And we're just going to pull our probes out here. We're just going to go ahead and lift this off the grill, pull it out here to the edge here, set that right down on our pan, and then we're just going to take this inside, let it rest for a little bit, and then we'll get it trimmed up. We'll see here in a few. All right, we've let this brisket set for about 20-30 minutes. Normally, if we're not ready to eat right away, I'll throw this thing in a cooler and let it sit for a couple hours. But we're ready to eat, and I can't stand smelling this thing anymore. I have to dig into it. It looks fantastic. It has shrunk up a good bit, which that's fine. It happens on briskets, but all that flavor and all that juice is settled inside. It's super tender. It's just going to be a waterfall when we start cutting this thing apart, I already know. Just kind of recap a little bit of what we've done. We took this brisket here that is actually natural from a steer we bought at the fair. This was not store-bought. We trimmed it up, got the fat cap off the top of it, gave us a place to make a nice bark with, which you can see turned out really well. We have a really nice dark thick bark on it, which is what I like. We injected it with our Butcher's Barbecue Prime brisket injection, and then we coated it with a little bit of AP rub, and then coated the top side with savory pecan seasoning from Butcher Barbecue to give us a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of like a nutty flavor to it. After we get this brisket all seasoned up, we stuck it on our Rectech Bull 700 at 275 degrees with some Cooking Pellets Perfect Mix. Now, standardly, that's a little bit warmer than I usually like to go, but we were doing a little bit of a hot and fast method here, trying to get this done in a single day for dinner time, which a lot of people know that's hard to do with a brisket. So we let it ride at 275 until we hit 165 degrees internal, and then we went out and wrapped it in our butcher paper, put it back on the grill, and we bumped our temperatures up to 295, and that got us done in just over 8 hours. So that's a lot more manageable time frame. And then we pulled it off the grill. We let it sit for about 20 minutes, still in the butcher paper. And now it is time to get this thing sliced up and get a taste of it. So let's go ahead and get slicing this. First off, I'm going to go ahead and separate our two halves here. That makes it a little bit easier for slicing. And all you got to do is just follow that fat vein and just cut the fat. And it'll separate the two halves. So now we have our flat and our point. This does have a little bit of skirt meat on the bottom here. That's just the way the butcher cut it for us. I'll go ahead and cut that off and get it out of the way also. Set it off to the side here. And then we'll cut a few slabs off of our flat, and then we'll cut a few off of our point. And you can see my board is just overflowing with juices already. There's so much juice coming out of this brisket right now. Let's see if we can pick that piece there up. As you can see, we have a great bend to it. The pull apart is just amazing. Just pops right apart. Let's get a little bit of a taste on it. That is so super tender. I think the pecan rub gave it a really nice flavor. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it and a little bit of nutty, but it has some background spice to it. Like I said, that pecan seasoning does have a little bit of a back end spice. And then when you're putting that on top of the AP seasoning, which has a lot of black pepper in it, that's going to give you a little bit of background spice. Now, by no means is it spicy. It's just more than plain sweet. So it gives you that multiple different spectrums of flavors when you bite into it. Rather than just being sweet or just being salty, you get a little bit of the salty and sweet, and then you get a little bit of a background spicy notes. It's a great flavor profile. It slices up super easy. Like I say, it pulls right apart. I mean, these, you can't get much better than that. So our flat looks awesome. Let's slice up a little bit of our point here and take a look at it. The grain's running a little bit different here on this one, so let's trim it this way here. As you can see, I mean, it is just overflowing my cutting board. Now, typically a lot of people will save their point for burnt ends. That is an option. I don't, unless I'm going directly out to make burnt ends. I usually just slice it up when I eat it. Now, if somebody, asks for burnt ends when I'm making a brisket, or, somebody's in the mood for burnt ends and I'm making them in particular, that's one thing. As you can see, again, we've got a great bend to it. The pull part on it's just fantastic. The texture is like butter. I'm pretty sure you don't even have to chew it. You could just pretty well eat it with just your tongue. It's so super tender. I don't even have to chew on it. It's just buttery. This turned out amazing, adding that injection into it, because you can really get a really strong beef flavor when you bite into it. And to a lot of people that are new to the barbecue, when I say, hey, you get a really strong beef flavor when you're biting into a piece of beef, they go, well, duh. But when you bite into a normal brisket that doesn't have any injection and you bite into this, you just get that strong punch of beef flavor, and it's awesome. And then your background notes or your seasonings come in behind it, and it makes for a really great flavor. But we're gonna go ahead and get this trimmed up the rest of the way, get it cut up. We're gonna eat tonight, and we hope you guys will join us on our next video. Remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.